very good evening and welcome to this edition of the Fourth Estate. Charles Mongu Shampagi, and as the national resistance movement begins its mass elections for its flag bearers in internal party primaries tomorrow, we've been receiving a lot of reports, a lot of complaints, but also the party is preparing. After the primaries, it will be holding its delegates conference to select a flag bearer to run for presidency on the party ticket. We already know that the President Yoweri Museveni, his name has already been submitted to the Electoral Commission. The Electoral Commission has said he is okay to continue and prepare to get nominated. The catch in that is that the party needs to present that candidate and can only find a flag bearer if it has gone through a delegates conference. So how did President Museveni's name get through the party processes before the party holds a national delegates conference? We'll be discussing that. We are not yet sure what the results from the elections in Tanzania are looking like, but the ruling Chama Mapinduzi party is facing its biggest challenge from a former insider, Lowassa, who is contesting on the opposition Chadema party ticket, challenging Magufuli, who is the CCM candidate. Already, Jakaya Kikwete, who's been president for the last 10 years, has bowed out, and he is leaving. He says the country will continue to run on. He's very happy that he is leaving. On the other side of the national resistance movement is John Patrick Amama Mbabazi, who until recently was Secretary General of the party and a powerful Prime Minister at one time called Super Minister. To discuss those issues, including the primaries tomorrow, we will have, let me start by introducing Kiwanuka Kiryowa. Kiwanuka is an NRM lawyer, but sometimes described as President Museveni's lawyer. Keke, very nice to have you.
Thank you, Charles. Good evening, viewers.
Keke is the name that most people who know Kiwanuka Kiryowa call him, so sometimes we'll refer you to as Keke. I hope you have no problem with that.
That's okay.
We have right next to me here is Severino Twinobusinje. He's been known as Mbabazi's lawyer. He jumped up to rescue Amama Mbabazi in 2010, when he was facing a challenge in Parliament over the oil allegations of oil bribery scandal, and he's been by his side until now. Severino, very nice to have you.
Nice to have you too. Good evening, viewers. It's a pleasure interacting with you.
And of course, my colleague, Onapito Ekomoloit. He's been described as many things, veteran journalist. He works for President Yoweri Museveni for some time. He now works with Nile Breweries SAB Miller as Corporate Affairs Director. Very nice to have you, Honor.
Thank you, Charles.
You missed last Sunday and people were asking where you were.
Well, I was doing other business. Let
me start with Severino. Your camp, the Amama Mbabazi camp, or what some people are calling the Go Forward camp, has raised protestations against the submission of President Yoweri Museveni's name as flag bearer for the NRM preparing for nominations. What exactly is your case?
Thank you so much, Charles, and the viewers. We do not have anything particular against Yoweri Museveni personally. Our complaint with NRM as a party is that it has flouted its own constitution, the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, and the Presidential Elections Act and other laws, by presenting somebody in the names of Yoweri Kaguta Museveni to the Electoral Commission, purporting that he is a flag bearer when actually he has never been elected by his party to be its flag bearer. As you rightly said from the beginning, the delegates conference is about to elect a flag bearer. So you cannot therefore elect a flag bearer when you already have one before the Electoral Commission. And so we think there is a fundamental legal question to be resolved, and that is where we stand.
Wouldn't someone claim and look at you and say you are raising some frivolous legalities to try and stop President Museveni from being nominated as an NRM flag bearer? Because we know that your camp has previously, there is a case in court challenging President Museveni on the question of age. There is a complaint against President Museveni for something else. And you're getting trapped into these legalities without preparing your candidate for actually getting nominated and winning the election.
First of all, we are not trapped. You see, when you see your enemy falling into a trap, don't interfere. You let him fall there, and then you start from there.
So why are you interfering with the NRM and President Yoweri Museveni?
We have not interfered. They have landed in a trap, and so you needed to wait to see how it all plays out. First of all, the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda provides that all parties must follow democratic principles as provided for under the Constitution. The Constitution of NRM itself provides that it is the delegates conference, the NRM conference, that elects its flag bearer. It does not provide anywhere under our law or its own constitution that a person runs the Electoral Commission, he picks a clearance, then he comes to waive it before the NRM delegates conference, and he says, look, here I am, I have been cleared by ECDF, you are obliged to elect me. Such a provision does not exist under our law, and as far as we are concerned, the delegates conference cannot be held to elect a flag bearer.
Because there is already a flag bearer.
They already have one, illegally though. And so to us, the most important question now is, can Mr. Yoweri Museveni be lawfully involved in the 2016 presidential elections? Our answer is no.
Thank you.
The only option that the Electoral Commission has at its disposal now is to disqualify him completely, and the NRM has an option of getting somebody else to go as its flag bearer, or opt out of the elections altogether and leave those candidates who qualify to be.
Okay, the ball is in your court. You cannot President Yoweri Museveni as flag bearer for the NRM, and the Electoral Commission cannot.
Well, you see, first of all, I'll tell you that if you want to have an argument, find two lawyers. You can't have an argument without two lawyers. Severin has put his point across. I totally disagree, but I'll probably...
I have two lawyers.
Yes, and you're about to have an argument, and I don't think he has one. But I'll tell you something that is interesting. You see, first of all, there's a process, and the NRM electoral process is very clear. You start by picking up forms expressing an interest. You pay the fees. You go for the party presidency. You go to the Central Executive Committee. The Central Executive Committee vets you. After the Central Executive Committee vets you, the vetting goes to NEC. NEC vets you. Once you're vetted by those two bodies, you then take your papers for nomination with the Electoral Commission. Now, in our case, it's very interesting for the NRM because only one person expressed interest in this position, went through the SEC, went through NEC, went for nomination. What my learned friend here is trying to put across is that NRM should have a ballot paper with one person. Now, Charles, I must tell you that is not only preposterous, it's actually inconceivable. The provisions of the NRM Constitution and the provisions, like he said, we're supposed to follow democratic principles. And the NRM Constitution is based on the laws of Uganda. And the laws of Uganda have even given us guidance on how this works. For example, I'll give you an example. Section 19 of the Presidential Elections Act of Uganda, not the one of NRM, provides that if after nomination there's only one candidate, that person will be declared unopposed within 48 hours. You see what I'm saying? Now, that means that if in Uganda, at the time of close of nominations by the National Electoral Commission, there's only one person who is standing for that position, that person is declared unopposed.
So if on the 5th, the closure of business day on the 5th of November, only one person has presented their papers to be nominated for the presidency, the national presidency
of Uganda, yes.
The Electoral Commission can, on the 6th of November, declare that person.
Not can. Is required by law under Section 19 to declare that person unopposed and declare him elected as president. Now, we have a conforming provision in our regulations. Probably Mr. Severin is not aware. Section 19 of the NRM electoral regulations in respect to the presidential candidate is very clear. It is conforming in all forms with Section 19 of the Presidential Elections Act. Now, what we have in this situation is that President Museveni has been nominated unopposed in the NRM.
Nominated by who?
You see, that's the process that I told you about. You see, you go through SEC, NEC, then you go to nomination. You see, so once you finish the nomination,
are you carefully avoiding the most important organ of your party, which is the National Delegates Conference?
No, you see, that's what I'm telling you. That it is like saying that Section 19 of the Presidential Elections Act avoids the biggest part of the population, where it says that if a person is nominated unopposed, he's declared elected unopposed. So that means you cannot go and have a ballot paper with one person after the nomination has ended. Election requires that there must be one or two, more than one person.
He wanted to write something.
But let me first finish this point. Now, what you have today, when he talks about a certificate that is being waived, that certificate is a certificate relating only to the question of signatures. Now, if he's clearly aware about the Electoral Commission laws, that provision for presenting signatures before the nomination day is only administrative.
Okay.
What the law requires is that a person on the date of nomination presents the signatures of those people supporting him. So clearly we have a candidate who has been nominated unopposed. We cannot possibly have a ballot paper at the delegates conference for one person to be elected.
Honor, let me first bring in Honor briefly, then I'll come back to you, because Honor has been silent. You are the journalist, you have worked with these guys, you know them very well.
Look, I think, Charles, the legal arguments I leave to the lawyers, but the politics, I think there are two problems we're dealing with here. One is, of course, the perennial question of democracy within political groups and organizations in this country. And it's not limited to NRM. All the groups that are so far trying to take power have faced a similar problem, whereby there seems to be some inconsistencies in terms of determining who ultimately is the leader or the flag bearer. All the groups have had that problem. So that is coming to the fore here, because on one hand, the NRM legitimately argues that its apex bodies have endorsed President Museveni, but again, someone could also argue, as the go forward people tend to argue, that they have bypassed the national conference. But for me, the bigger question then is, we are dealing with this constant problem of inability to arbitrate between conflicting legal arguments. So where are the courts in this question? I seem to see no courts in action, because
I think the Go Forward team has gone to court.
Look, if they have gone to court, why haven't the courts pronounced themselves on this issue? Because we seem to be postponing a lot of issues by the courts not being decisive on really, because they must be.
Why do you think they're indecisive?
I don't know. Because I'm seeing a lot of arguments going on between the opposition and the NRM, between individuals, the police, and what. Someone needs to
there is no arbiter.
Yes, there must be an arbiter who is an independent party, so that even if the decision is not the best, somebody must go home knowing that the decision has been made.
Yes.
Otherwise, we seem to be just using force at the end of the day, that whoever can force their way.
We're playing politics using legal arguments. Severino, you had something you wanted to respond to. Okay.
Thank you, Charles. Charles, I wouldn't know how to put into perspective what my learned friend, with due respect, has said. It is not correct and it is not true that SEC recommends, it also recommends to NEC of NRM, and then a person moves to Electoral Commission. It's not correct. It's totally wrong. It is false, with the greatest respect. What is true is SEC vets, it recommends to NEC. NEC recommends to the delegates conference. The composition of the delegates conference is that you have a wide spectrum of people from across the country, from the district, the sub-counties, and so on. So it is this body known as the National Delegates Conference, which has one mandate, and no any other body of NRM has it, to elect the national presidential flag bearer and other leaders. What my learned friend has said is totally false. I don't agree with it. Secondly,
Charles, Charles, let me just respond to that. You see, my learned friend, you see, Charles, when we are discussing,
can you
let me finish my thought.
You see why I need confidence.
No, Charles.
Okay, we need to have you guys communicate to one another. Can you finish your thought, and then Keke, you respond?
Yes. So it is not true that after NEC has received a recommendation from SEC that a person runs to Electoral Commission. That is totally false. We contest it, and we have already filed matters in court. That's point number one. Point number two, the signatures that are being talked about is a lawful process. You see, nomination is a process. It's not an event. It starts when the Electoral Commission announces the roadmap, then people who have been cleared, because Section 9 of the Presidential Elections Act is very clear that a person who goes to the Electoral Commission to pick nomination papers is either an independent or a person who is sponsored by a party. For you to be sponsored by a party, you must have gone through all the processes. Yoweri Museveni has not been elected by the delegates conference as provided for by the NRM constitution, and so he couldn't have found himself in the Electoral Commission. What the Electoral Commission chairman should have done was to tell him that please go back and harmonize with your party. Once it has elected you, you can come.
On that point, before Keke comes in,
yes,
my information is the Secretary General of the National Resistance Movement wrote a letter to the Electoral Commission, the National Electoral Commission, and said they were seeking to pick nomination papers for their party flag bearer. Received a clearance from the Electoral Commission and was told you can present the signatures for verification.
Yeah.
And the process was followed to that later. Is that a problem? Because that means the party is actually presenting a candidate to the Electoral Commission.
What the party should have done was to go to the delegates conference, elect the flag bearer. After electing flag bearer, go to the Electoral Commission.
You still belong to the NRM, don't you?
Yes, I do.
And Go Forward still belongs to the NRM.
Absolutely.
Now, my quick question to you before I come to KK,
yes,
is what section of the NRM constitution was violated when they have an unopposed candidate for the position of president?
First of all,
party flag bearer, rather, for the president.
Various provisions of NRM constitution create various structures. At one point, the NRM caucus sat in Chankwanzi and claimed to have created a sole candidate. They did not stop there, but they received the support of the party, gave them billions of money, went across the country and bribed people.
You know, in Severino, you need to remain focused.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's remain focused.
I'm very focused.
You see, when we get into an argument and we start politicking, then we shall lose the point. Let us first get back to the question that Charles asked you.
That's what I'm
Which
trying
provision of the law of the NRM constitution was breached by that? Maybe just to educate you, the NRM provisions are very clear. When I told you that when you leave NEC, you go to the Electoral Commission, it was not the Electoral Commission of the country. You go to the Electoral Commission of NRM for nomination. When you go to the Electoral Commission of NRM for nomination and you have one person, under again the NRM constitution, every election in NRM is supposed to be by secret ballot. Why you go to the Electoral Commission of NRM before you go to the delegates conference? So you can prepare for that election by secret ballot. And that is when you do the nomination. Our regulations are very clear that once the nomination has been completed and there's only one candidate, you declare that candidate unopposed. Now, Mr. Severin, are you suggesting to us that NRM, after going through the nomination with one candidate, should prepare a ballot paper with one candidate, take it to Nambol and tell the delegates, we have one candidate, choose? Choose what?
Let's pick this up after a short commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Fourth Estate. We're having legal arguments from two lawyers, from the Go Forward camp, Severino Twinobusinje, and from the Yoweri Museveni camp, Kiwanuka Kiriowa. Can President Museveni be legally nominated by the Electoral Commission on the date he has booked? I think it's 3rd.
Yes, it is.
3rd November.
At 10 a.m.
Yes, at 10 a.m. and be declared or handed to the country as a candidate, as a flag bearer for the National Resistance Movement. That's a big argument. We'll go into a bit of the discussions about the primaries for members of parliament, district chairpersons for the NRM that will be happening tomorrow, and have a brief discussion about the processes in Tanzania, but trying to link together what this means for our democracy. So
I think, Charles, let me ask a question. I know, of course, politically, whether you had Nambol or no Nambol, President Museveni will be the NRM flag bearer. There's no doubt about that. But I think for KK, for the benefit of the NRM supporters, and to really make sure this process appears democratic, is to explain whether the National Conference or the National Delegates Conference has any power which supersedes the power of SEC and NEC. Could they, for example, overturn the decision of those apex bodies, as they say, power belongs to the people, legally? Within the constitution of the NRM, can they overturn the decision of those bodies?
Just before you come in, KK, can Severin also add his question?
Oh, thank you so much, Charles. My learned friend Chiriowa has raised a question that would puzzle anybody listening to him. First of all, NRM Electoral Commission is provided for, its functions are provided for under the NRM Constitution. Never anywhere does it provide that NRM Electoral Commission can override the powers of the National Delegates Conference. It's not there, as far as I'm concerned. That's point number one. And so to the extent that that organ was left, its processes were hijacked by a lower organ which does not have the mandate of electing a flag bearer for the party or political leaders for the party in the new constitution, which is even contested. Mr. Yoweri Museveni illegally found himself under the Electoral Commission of Uganda. Point number two. My learned friend again mentioned something about the signatures. You see, signatures, as I told you, it is a process. It is not an event. It is not something that you can handle casually. It is a legal function conducted by the Electoral Commission. And it can only be collected, the signatures can only be collected if you have proceeded under the provision of Section 9 of the Presidential Elections Act, namely that you should have been cleared by your party. It is only if the Delegates Conference has nominated a flag bearer that then you can find yourself moving into the Electoral Commission to pick the nomination papers. To our understanding, what was done flouted this section of the Presidential Elections Act. Then, the leg to it is, this having been done, what remains of the Delegates Conference that is going to be held in a few days, that exercise is superfluous. As far as we are concerned, it is a katemba, it can be ignored. They can meet to discuss any other issues, not to elect a flag bearer, because under the Presidential Elections Act, there is no provision for you to go and elect a flag bearer to rubber stamp something that was illegally done.
Yeah, the question to you, KK, is that as a party, some people have claimed that you do not have internal democracy, and now you keep usurping the powers of what in your constitution is the most important organ of the party, the apex body of your party, which is the National Delegates Conference.
You see, Charles, I do not know how I can explain this to my learned friend and everyone and all the listeners here, because I find it difficult to understand. You see, the moment you fail to remain focused on the issue before you, you'll have a problem. I have given you a clear example. Under the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, the President of Uganda is elected by the people of Uganda by adult suffrage. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
The same Constitution has given powers to Parliament to make laws under which the election of the President is done. That same law has told you that if at the close of nomination there is only one person for that post, you declare them unopposed. So that law has actually told you that if there is only one person standing for that position, there is no election to take place. Now, what my learned friend is saying is that the EC has overtaken. Actually, let me start with an honest question. Whether the Delegates Conference has powers. Yes, it does. But the Delegates Conference of the NRM is to elect from persons recommended to it by the National Executive Council. Now, the National Executive Council had only one candidate, and therefore there cannot be an election of one person. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let us
just a moment. There is a question of the politics here. Just hold a moment.
First, let me
please, Keke, if you just hold it a moment. This debate is not a new debate. It starts in February 2014 in Changwan, where an organ, a body that is not an organ, a recognized organ of the party, makes a decision to present or to ask President Museveni to run as a sole candidate.
Yes.
And that's something that Tinobu raised. Yes. Is it a continuation, or are we reading things as we see them today? Because that's important. The process is important.
First of all, I need to educate you. The parliamentary caucus is a recognized organ of the party. One. Number two, the parliamentary caucus of the NRM is free.
Charles,
which section of the party constitution
that's not correct.
Recognizes the parliamentary caucus as an organ of the
not
party?
an organ.
Let me tell you,
it's not one of those organs.
You see, you have an institution called NRM. It has the Entrepreneurs League, it has the Workers League, it has the Elders League, it has the Youth League, it has the Parliamentary Caucus, it has all these bodies. Now, all these bodies work together to complement what we call the NRM organization.
I hear you.
Now, the parliamentary caucus made its choice
can you first clear something? You said you wanted to educate me, and I want to challenge you and tell you that in the NRM constitution, the parliamentary caucus is not an organ of the party.
You see,
the Entrepreneurs League, yes. The Youth League, yes. The Women's League, yes. The Elders Council, yes. The parliamentary caucus is not an organ of the party. Quote from your section of the law. I'm going to get you the section of the law on that. Let me finish this point. As we go through the break, I'll go through my constitution and show it to you. The one thing that you must understand, and I want to be very clear, the party parliamentary caucus is a body, an organ that can make its own resolutions. The resolutions of that organ may not be binding on any other organ of the party. It is up to them to go out and convince those organs as to what they are. But the issue at hand here is whether or not President Museveni has been properly presented as a candidate for NRM. First of all, let us be very clear in our mind. The nomination for the party presidency has not happened. It is going to happen on the 3rd. So when Mr. Severino tells me that they have gone to court, how can you go to court to challenge something that has not happened? It's superfluous. It's ridiculous. The party delegates conference cannot sit and be given one person to elect. What should happen? Take us to the party delegates conference.
Yes.
What is going to happen in the case of deciding who is flag bearer for the NRM?
What will happen is that the Electoral Commission, the Central Executive Committee will make its report and say, when we opened up the process, we had one person who expressed interest, and that is what we received. We looked at this person's qualifications and found that he was a fit and proper person. We recommended this person to the NEC. The NEC went through the process and recommended this person as a person who can be elected for this position. Now,
presented that to then the person went to the party Electoral Commission
to be nominated. In order for you to be on the ballot paper, you must go through nomination. Now, there was no way, some people have argued that the nomination should have happened in Namboole. That's ridiculous, because our exercises are done by secret ballot. So that whole process was done. Now, what happens is SEC will make its report.
So, just this moment.
Let me finish.
Take us through the process carefully.
SEC will make...
You have delegates of the NRM watching this show.
Yes.
Many of them are confused on whether Yoweri Museveni will be their party's flag bearer and what is going on with the processes, because the Go Forward team is still part of the party. Actually, your party still recognizes Amama Mbaba as a member of the party. That's why you have written to him to invite him to the delegates conference.
I don't know whether they've written to him.
Yes. The question I am putting to you, once the SEC makes its report, NEC makes its report, what will you present? What will happen after that?
We will then present to the delegates and say, having had only one candidate nominated for the position of presidency, that person under Section 19 of the electoral regulations was declared elected and opposed. And that's it.
And there's been a formal process within the party Electoral Commission, to decide or to endorse President Museveni and say, you are unopposed, so you can go on to the National Electoral Commission.
You see, and that is exactly where I take issue with my friend Severino when he says the Electoral Commission has usurped the powers. Electoral Commission is stuck with one person. It has regulations which say if there's only one person, you declare him unopposed. I have not heard them complaining about all the district chairmen and the members of parliament who have been declared unopposed in the NRM. In the NRM, members of parliament, flag bearers, are elected by adult suffrage. We saw a list the other day of about 25 people who have been declared unopposed. Because there is no second person to contest, you can't have an election.
Position. I need to bring it on
Charles. Yes, just a second, Charles. You see, it is important. You see, my problem with my land friend Chilio is that he appears to be a politician. I'm a lawyer, and I want to stick to the law. It is not possible for Mr. Museveni and NRM to run away from the law, because the law makes him president. And so if you run away from it, there is no way you can become president. I don't see how he can in the present circumstances. Why do I say so? the delegates conference has no obligation to take that recommendation. In fact, to prove the point, he says he is a sole candidate, granted, assuming it is, that he is a sole candidate. Why did he fear to go through a proper body to endorse that sole candidacy promulgation by a non-authorized party to do that? So I think what he feared, why they decided to cross this chapter and come to go to the Electoral Commission without the legal mandate of the proper function of the organ of the party, is because perhaps he's something he was fearing, and which is trying to run away from, because the delegates conference has no obligation to take that recommendation.
You haven't answered the fundamental point of law that you want to right.
I am coming to it.
No, just a moment.
Just a second.
Can I put that fundamental point
yes,
to you?
Put it.
What does the party do when it has only one person expressing interest to represent it on What the party does, for that matter, is to go and present yourself before the proper organ and see whether you will actually pass through. Do you think then, Mr. Severino, do you think then that the Section 9 he quoted of 19,
Section 19 of the
Presidential Electoral Act
yes,
is actually wrong? Is unconstitutional?
It's right.
It says once only one person has been nominated, then the Electoral Commission will declare that person.
That is in respect of the Electoral Commission of Uganda, headed by Chigundu.
So you are
not in respect to.
So you are saying it is okay.
Just
the
a
National
second.
Electoral Commission.
Just a second. The National Electoral Commission goes through processes. The party organs are supposed to go through internal processes to the point where the proper organ of NRM elects a flag bearer. He has not been elected, and so you cannot declare him unopposed because the delegates who are supposed to elect have not elected one. That is the point of departure.
Look, Charles, clearly we are dealing here with the post-mortem of a problem that I indicated earlier. You know, there's this endemic phobia for free and fair elections. Just hold on.
I had not finished my thought.
No, there's a lot of phobia for free and fair contests in our political systems, and that's where the whole problem stems from. And of course, they go forward and all the other TD or whatever you call it, they haven't escaped this problem. They have also been fiddling around with who becomes the flag bearer. And this, look, when you look at our American friends with their current process, you see the detail they go through to try and prove that somebody is truly the flag bearer of the party. No, there's so much Kampalaism in all these organizations. They like to decide things in Kampala, in rooms. There is so much fear to expose yourself to, and you are seeing it in the primaries of the NRM and even of other political groups. So until when we overcome that problem, it's nice to argue, make all the legal arguments, but are we breeding a democratic culture? I think that's where the problem is.
If you can indulge me, I'll start with you as soon as we come out of the break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This last segment of the Fourth Estate. It's an interesting debate, and I am looking forward that we'll discuss. Ona raises a fundamental question and says, the building of this democratic culture. If you see all the fighting going on in the NRM primaries, I am told Minister Mwesigwa Rukutana and businessman Bob Kabonero were in trouble in Ntungamo the other day. One of the candidates, I think Agre Chobuguzi, he's a candidate somewhere in Chiruhura, his car was shot at. There's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of mayhem that we have been seeing in an internal party process, and he gives an example of an elaborate process that the Americans go through to decide who becomes flag bearer at the end of the day. Severino, you're raising some issues.
Yes, thank you so much. Charles, it really bothers me. First of all, my learned friend wrongly puts the information to the public that NRM Parliamentary Caucus is an organ of the party. It is not. It is just having functions that are clearly spelled out. Its role is purely parliamentary legislation, to build one common consensus on a position before the parliament, and that's all. That is where it stops. And to tell you this point, that is why when they went to Changwanzi sometime in 2014, in February, and they passed that so-called sole candidate resolution, Alipanga went to court. The issues of the Changwanzi resolution and whatever happened in the delegates conference are right before court. We expected that Dr. Badru Chigundu would have told Mr. Yoweri Museveni to first go and finish his cases, then he comes when he's clean. Because what is right before court is that, first of all, his age is contested. The sole candidate business is contested, and all issues relating to how they conducted the delegates conference of December 2014. It is all contested. It is before court. So how did Chigundu quickly go to accept his papers?
Can I ask a rather political question
Yes.
when we're discussing the law? Do you think legalese will actually deliver you the president?
Yes, they will.
How will they? I thought getting the presidency is a political contest.
He has told you what he wants to do. He wants to use legalese to get the president. We shall stick to the votes for us in NRM. For him, he has told you clearly on national TV that yes, the legalese will get us the president. I doubt that that will not be an abrogation of our national constitution, because I think it's very clear.
Are you
that
suggesting that courts have no business?
The only way
we do?
a person can accede to power in the presidency should be throughout secret ballot by adult suffrage. If you want to use legalese, that's
without following the law?
You are ignoring KK.
No, without following the law.
As the NRM, you boast of having the biggest national delegates conference, bringing together more than 10,000 people.
Yes.
You are ignoring 10,000 people and are presenting to the Electoral Commission a candidate you say has cleared through the party processes when your apex body is the delegates conference.
You see, Charles, and I'm going to say this, I think, for the last time, so that we make it very clear that if your view, and you hold the view that where there is one person you should have an election, then I do not know what we are going to do.
But who tells you there is one person?
There is a fundamental...
There is one person presented by who?
There is only one person.
Where is he?
You see, Severino.
Yes.
Severino, let us not act as if we have been absent. There was a process in NRM. To your knowledge, did anyone else other than President Museveni express interest in that position?
Why didn't you wait for the delegates conference to see whether there is no second one?
Why don't you answer the question?
The thing is,
why don't you answer the
cannot
question?
get to
Was
the
there anyone else who presented his papers to the party to seek its nomination?
To say there is no one else, that question can only be answered by the appropriate organ.
So you are saying
you
that
have no right to decide for others.
You are saying that at the delegates conference, Severino can just walk in and say, I want to stand for the presidency?
The delegates conference has no obligation to take that recommendation. It could have sent it back and you go back to the same process.
No.
You can't say no.
You see, the delegates conference, its job is to elect. To elect. And this is an English word, which means to make a choice. You get what I mean? The choice of one against nothing you cannot be an election. Let us be clear on this.
Yes,
Charles,
if you could just clarify this.
Yes.
Did anyone else within the national resistance movement present himself when the party called for nominations? And if it didn't, what does that mean in law?
To who?
The party has processes that it follows. And those processes require that the party electoral commission will call for people to express interest. People express interest, and they go through a process that includes the Central Executive Committee, the National Executive Committee, or Council, the National Executive Council, and then you go to the Delegates Conference. Did anyone else, to your knowledge, present himself through that process?
To the best of my knowledge, the process was not complete. It was cut short. He should have waited for the Delegates Conference.
So what happened at the Delegates Conference? The question is,
he should have waited.
It looks like Mama was wanted to go and pull up something.
What did he fear at the Delegates Conference?
But the point is, Mama, unfortunately for him, he refused to present his papers to the Electoral Commission of the NRM, and first technically was knocked out by that. And unfortunately, you know that, as he says, the law, politics tends to supersede the law.
You see, Charles, when I'm not very sure if he's not the one who drafted those regulations. The so-called regulations he's talking about were designed as a document to block only one person, Honorable Mbabazi. And he informed the Electoral Commission that he cannot subject himself to it under that circumstance.
Yeah, no.
So we waited for you to finish the so-called process that you are making, and then go through the appropriate organ. You cannot
and the
say...
appropriate organ is the Delegates Conference.
The Delegates Conference. So that's where all those issues are resolved.
Are you suggesting, Mr. Twinobusinja, therefore, that Mr. Mama Mbabazi will appear in Nambole for the Delegates Conference and will present himself as a candidate?
He has said he does not intend to because of the reasons he has given. I think he's out of the country.
So in that case, what is the concern from your side of the processes the NRM has followed? Because he was presented an opportunity to present himself for nomination. He did not. He pulled out because of the reasons you have just said. He has indicated he will not go to Nambole at the delegates conference because of the reasons we have just talked about. Then where does that leave the party? And your candidate?
Where did the party get the mandate to present somebody who had not been elected by the appropriate organ? That's the issue.
Charles,
Yes,
I think for me, I look at these things in at times a very simplistic way. We lawyers can go around so many things, and we go around in circles and never come back to any possible clear answer. The moment my friend Mr. Severino reconciles himself to the fact that in order for you to go to Nambole to stand as a party candidate, you must go through a nomination process, just like it is for the national election. To suggest that because there is a process and the people of Uganda are the ones supposed to elect, so for me on voting day I can just walk to the constituents and tell them, people, I'm also standing. I think that's a bit way off the mark. So let me finish. You see, you have a process. This process has been open. Ona said we have a fear for internal democracy. The process was open. Mr.
It was not open.
It was not open.
In this case, you can say Mama Zana had the fear.
Yes, in this case it was the other one who had the fear, because but let me finish, Charles.
When Severino says that Alipanga raised the case against the sole candidature, and it's been lying in those courts.
You see,
up to this date hasn't been resolved.
You see, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. I am a voter. Yeah? I am a member of NRM. You understand? I come out here and get a group of NRM youth, like say they have the poor youth, who have said that for them they've decided to support so and so. And therefore we are going to go out and support this candidate. That is our choice. It's our decision. And therefore we go out to propagate that position. Now, the sole candidature, if in fact the argument was that they are propagating the sole candidature, then there would be no process for nomination and election. So the NRM Parliamentary Caucus made its view known, how they feel and how they want things to be done. The process was open to the whole country. By the way,
it was not
in our party constitution, and I wish I had known we would go this far, I would have brought you the notices in the newspaper. This is the day when nominations for party people will be taken. Honorable Mama Mbaba, as you may recall, went out there, picked forms, asked for forms, didn't get them. There was some confusion. That ended. He came back and said, I will not stand in this party for his reasons. Now, NRM gets one person, President Museveni goes, picks the forms. He fills them in, pays the money,
Takes them back
to SEC. SEC looks at it, it is okay. NEC looks at it, it is okay. Takes them back to Electoral Commission on the day, again gazetted in the newspapers, as to the day when these documents are supposed to be returned. So Electoral Commission at the end of that day, at 6 p.m., looks around, and no one has presented themselves. So Electoral Commission goes back to its regulations, looks at them and says, okay, I have only one candidate, so I'll declare this candidate elected unopposed. Now, for him to say that we should have waited for the delegates conference is to simply say that at the delegates conference, a person could have presented themselves to stand for this position. Charles, it is not possible, because in our constitution, Article 43 requires that all processes, all positions are to be elected by secret ballot. Meaning that this process that the Electoral Commission was going through was to prepare itself in order to prepare a ballot paper for that exercise.
Not by proclamation.
No, it was not by proclamation.
Okay. But okay. Let me ask this broad question, gentlemen, moving away from the legal arguments, because those can only be resolved in court. Ona, if you look at what has been going on, we have an election that's been running in Tanzania today. Yes, it's not the cleanest process, you would say, but at least you know that it's going to deliver a result and the country will not collapse. You contrast that with what is going on with the National Resistance Movement electing flag bearers for members of parliament and district chairpersons. Where are we in our democratization process?
Sure. I think the problem is not really so much the whatever you call the process. We certainly have had 30 years with a lot of elections. I think now it is the culture which is coming, the value system. How do people view elections and what is the purpose of elections? This personalization in the quest for personal gain is really threatening this country. And I think if we don't, somehow the political class does not sit back and say, is this the road we want to take? I don't think we are going to really enhance our democracy. Because look, in Tanzania, somehow they have developed a culture where people, yes, there is serious contest, but it's not a life and death situation. We are now starting to see life and death situation in our politics, literally. And again, it's due to the heavy monetization of the elections, the desire to win at all costs, because people are seeing these positions as income positions. They are not really service positions. Otherwise, where would be this desperation?
Yes, Charles. Let me ask a question. Is this the road we actually want to take as a country in this democratization process?
I think to us, the constitution is very clear, and our laws are all very clear. What we can see is one section of our country, the section that Mr. Chiliwa represents, decides to simply act outside that legal framework.
I thought you still belong to the same section.
No.
See, we have got two sides within NRM. There is a side which believes in the law strictly. That side of NRM is led by Honorable Mbabas. There is a side which does not believe in the law. It thinks the law distracts its processes, and Chiwanuka has been making its case. I do not know.
What about the sides that belong to FDC, for example, to the other political parties? TDA that can't actually campaign and stuff like that.
Okay, let me come to that. So, it is the position that my learned friend Chiliwa has been presenting. I don't know whether Mr. Chiliwa understands or he wants to mean that the entire membership of the delegates conference of NRM is a dark room, and that there is only one source of light. That small group led by the views that Chiliwa is trying to present here. Because, as I have told you, what was going to happen into the delegates conference was tell them to go back and repeat the process. That's why they have decided to cut that process short and they run to the Electoral Commission. And the law doesn't allow it. That's one thing he's fearing to say. But I know that the delegates conference is not obliged to take that recommendation.
Our time is out. We need to get out of here. I'll put the broad question to Kiwanuka Kiliwa. Is this the road we want to take as a country? You compare what is happening here in your party primaries and all the chaos that we've been hearing, the process that has arrived at the sole candidate, the grumblings of Amama Mbabazi, Bukenya coming in and coming out, the complaints about people being undressed on the roads, and a formally nominated, a formally elected flag bearer of a party unable to go out and campaign because of the deployment of police. Is this the road we want to take in our democratization process?
You see, you have a country which is growing democratically. You have very many arms of this section growing. Now you have NRM, which has a method of selecting a candidate which is by adult suffrage. You have FDC, which uses an electoral college. You have DP, which uses also some kind of electoral college. You have TDA, which uses non-consensus positions. Now, all these form part of the political cycle. Now, when you tell me that is this where we want to go, all of us here want to see a prosperous Uganda. All of us here want.
And you see us achieving it the way we are conducting our attempts at democratization.
You see, that's why I gave you these very many examples. Because when you see NRM going through this process and you say, oh, NRM is having so many problems, are you suggesting that the electoral college where 6 people sit down and choose a candidate is the better democratic process? Is it this TDA thing where you say we shall agree on consensus and leave it? Is that the process we want to go? No.
I don't know.
What Honor says, is it is becoming a life and death situation, because it's becoming like career. You get what I mean? It's like service is becoming a career, and you get all these people coming back and forth. It's because of the people who are playing. The system itself that is in play is where he says we need to come in. Now, we need to...
And do you think that when you do the elections tomorrow, the NRM will demonstrate that as the biggest party that has been running this country, will demonstrate that actually there is movement towards democratization?
You see, NRM has at all points tried to do exactly that. It is a process that is not going to take a day. Okay. It is a process that will take some time. But
thank you. Just have 30 seconds and then you'll have 30 seconds.
The conspiracy of silence by the courts is worrying. I think the courts need to come out and stop most of these debates between the police and the politicians, because I see even after nomination we are going to have bigger problems. What will stop the police from finding very legitimate, seemingly, or legitimate arguments to stop some people from campaigning.
Thank you. 30 seconds for you, Severino.
Thank you very much. My request to my learned friend and the people he represents is that they should, first of all, respect our constitution, respect the law, because the law puts into the framework of governance that we have.
Thank you. Our time is out. We need to get out of here. Thank you very much. Kiwanuka Kiriwa for making time for the show.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Severino Tunebusinje, for making time for the show. Thank you very much. And thank you very much to you all, our viewers, for joining us tonight. Someone was commenting and said the police should at least write a letter to the president and say, yes, you're moving, but as far as this is concerned, you as the sitting president, here you're breaking the law. We will not stop to arrest you on the road, but here you're campaigning, you're not actually. At the bare minimum that they can do that, and that the Electoral Commission can do that. We'll be watching to see what comes out of Tanzania, and of course our colleagues in the news team have been giving us updates. We'll also be watching closely, and NTV will continue to give you updates on the NRM primaries process tomorrow. Have a good night.
Good night.